Hello, this is Dr. Ray Ramirez from Chesterton Academy of the Sacred Heart with Mary, the mother of the ruler of the universe, to work on some metric basics for biology class. So one of the things that we want to remember is that metric is always in a division of 10. Unlike there's 12 inches in a foot, 36 inches in a yard. Every distinction that we pay attention to in metric is divisible by 10. Now, as we're speaking here in February of 2025, the metric distinctions we're dealing with are going to be somewhat limited. We go from the base, we're talking mostly measurements, so we're talking meter in length. Okay, this could be, if it was volume, that would be liter. If it was weight, it'd be a gram. I'm late for class already. So when we have more than that, we go by factors of 10 to different amounts. The only one we're really paying attention to in biology this year is the kilogram, or excuse me, kilogram if it was weight, or kilometer for our length. So we have a lot of you may be familiar with a lot of 5K runs, 5 kilometer runs, which are equivalent of 3.2. What we want to know is a kilometer means 1,000. So 1 and then 3 zeros. So 1, 2, 3. So if you're given a number with, say, 7.35 meters, to make the equivalent of a kilometer, we go 1, 2, 3. So we move our decimal point 1, 2, 3. I always put a 0 in front of my less than 1 numbers. So I have 2 zeros to fill in. So it's going to be 0.00735 kilometers. Okay, so that's if we're going up. So if we're going down, then this is going to look a little different. So from a whole meter, we go to 1/10 of a meter, which is a decimeter, which is similar to what we're familiar with a dime. Okay, a dime is 1/10 of a cent. So a decimeter is 1/10 of a meter. Same with centimeter, that's 1/100th of a meter. We're familiar with that because if we have 1 cent, we have 1/100th of a dollar. Same with this. So if we have our 7.35 meters, if we want to figure out how many centimeters that is, first thing you want to think of is a centimeter bigger or smaller than a meter. 1 centimeter is smaller. So if we have meters here, then the number here, has to be larger because the meter is going to be small. Here's what I mean by that. So we have 7.35 meters. So we're going to move it 2 spots here. So that means we have 735 centimeters. Okay, so the number is a little smaller, but it's actually an equivalent. It's 7.35. If that's confusing, don't worry about it. But 735 centimeters is the same as 7.35 meters. Okay? Now, if we want to try and figure out millimeters, a millimeter is 1/1,000,000th. You think of a millipede, that's our little segmented worm, which is like our annelids, right? And we've got all these little legs. We thought they were 1,000,000, they really are not, but that's 1/1000th of a meter. So we take our meter stick, pretend this is a meter stick, and we divide it up into 1,000 pieces, and that's where we get our millimeters. So to convert from a meter So if I have, let's say, 8.63 meters, and I want to know how many millimeters, okay, there's going to be more in a number-wise of millimeters than meters because it's 1,000th. So we move it 3 spots, right? So this is an easy thing to do. So if it were me, I'd write this line down, put my base here of meter, and then put 1, 2, 3 lines and write deci, centa, and milli. We'll get to these others here in a second. So it's like, okay, I know I have to move it 3 spaces. So this 8.63, I have to move it 3 spaces. So I've got a blank spot there. So I've got 863 and then 0 millimeters. So 8,630 millimeters is the same as 8.63 meters. Okay? Then we go down 3 more. The ones we're at least worried about in our biology class is then micrometer and nanometer. There are others in between here. There are others further smaller as well, divisions. But we're going to pay attention to these. So a micrometer, I've been teaching us to use MCM, which is the common abbreviation in medical terminology. More commonly in the scientific, you'll see the letter mu, which I think is Greek, right? So you can let me know in the comments. But the letter mu, but that's hard on a computer, and most of us medical people don't have a mu number, so we'll abbreviate it MCM, okay? But so this is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. So there's 6 decimal points. So again, we put this line out here, we go to deci, centa, milli, and then we do 3 more lines to get to milli here. So if we have, instead of this, let's say we've got 0.56 meters, and we're trying to figure out how many micrometers, okay, we know we've got to go 1, 2, 3 to get to the millimeter, and then we've got to do 3 more to get to the micrometer. So if we're following this over, I've got 56, and then I've got to put 1 0 here, and then these 3 placeholders. So we actually have 560,000 micrometers is the equivalent of 0.56 meters. Okay? So now let's say we want to go down to nanometer, which is another 3 down. So that's 0. We have these 3, 0, 0, 0. And then another from milli to micro, 0, 0, 0. And then here down to nano. So 2 more spots plus our 1. So this is 1 nanometer expressed as a meter. So that's kind of hard to read. So that's why we just say 1 nanometer, NM. That's a little bit easier to deal with than that calculation. But then how do we convert to meter? And I'm starting with meter, and then we can see how we can go from, say, nanometer to millimeter here in a moment. But let's say we've got, 8.372 meters, and we're trying to figure out how many nanometers. Okay, so we already figured out if we draw this line out here correctly with our deci, centa, milli, and then 3 spots to the micrometer, 3 spots to the nano, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get to how many nanometers. So we put 8, and then we go 1, 2, 3. Now I'm just going to put a line here so I can see where I'm at. 4, 5, 6, another little line, 7, 8, 9. That's where our dot's going to be, and then I fill in 3, 7, 2. These other placeholders are going to have zeros. So that gives me, what is this? 8,372,000,000 nanometers. Okay? That's usually not what we're doing, though. We're usually doing something like, I measure out and I'm counting because it's real tiny, but I can count 186 nanometers. I do everything though in millimeters, just for standardizing thing. So how do I get to millimeters? Couple different ways to do that. First thing you can do is you do an intermediate step, because say it's simpler for me to go all the way to meter and then back to millimeter, which is certainly fine. Okay, so what I would do there is to get to a meter, because ultimately we want to get to the millimeter, but if I'm going to say, okay, this is 186, but this time instead of going down, we're going from nanometer up. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 186. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. With our decimal point, I always put a 0 in front of any number that's smaller. So we have 1, 2, 3 placeholders, like that. Okay? And that's how many meters, but we want to get to millimeter. So like we did before here, when we did from meter down to millimeter, now we went, this is how many meters. Now we want to convert this to up to millimeter, from meter to millimeter. Now we go down 3. So we move this 3, and now our point is there. So 0.000186. Okay, takes 2 steps. That's okay. If you need to do 2 steps, just be patient with yourself. Okay, you'll get to the right answer. Like many things in life, there are many pathways to there. That's what Mary helps to remind us of. And so let's look at another way. Let's say we want to try and do directly going from nanometers to millimeters. How could we do that? Using our little scale. So if we go from nano to millimeters, we're going up the scale 6 places. Okay? So we're going 186, so we're going from 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have our decimal point here. 1, 2, so that's a placeholder. So we have 0.000186 millimeters. And that's what we got earlier on there. Okay? So we can do that to help us convert any metric measurement to another metric measurement. Okay, it's always in a factor of 10, so you can always move that decimal point around. Use a scale like this and get comfortable with where these numbers are, and that can help you. For biology here, we're just worried about kilometer, which is more than 1, and then these others are the smaller ones. A decimeter is 1/10, centimeter 1/100th, millimeter 1/1000th, and then we go to micrometer 1/1,000,000th, and a nanometer 1/1000,000th of a meter. Of course, you might remember, right? We talked about one of the first classes. We talked about the Shroud of Turin. Remember how thin or how thick on the fibrils that image was? It was anywhere from 10 to 15 why do I keep doing that first? Nanometers. So 1/1000,000th of an inch deep. Our Lady, not of the ruler, but Our Lady of Guadalupe, on the tilma she left for Juan Diego of her image. Does anybody know what the depth of that is? If I remember right, and I could be wrong, you can correct me in my comments. If I remember right, it's anywhere from 30 to 40, and I don't remember now if it's the micrometers or the nanometers, but very thin on there. So God can even paint with a very tiny paintbrush to help us to reveal what's the truth. And so hopefully this helps you as you try to study what God has created for us. So thank you very much, and I hope that's helpful as you do your metric homeworks.